This month marks 20 years since dozens of women were viciously attacked by a mob of men in Central Park after the Puerto Rican Day Parade. The assaults, largely captured on video, resulted in groundbreaking legislation changing the way sexual crimes are prosecuted. In this special report, I take a look at how this horror made history. And Peyton Bryant's life was forever changed one June day 20 years ago.
I was thrown down on my back and attacked by 18 men.
She went for a skate through Central Park, but wound up becoming one of more than 50 women attacked in broad daylight.
It is very hard for me to talk about because to this day, I still feel very strongly that that should not have happened to me.
Crowds of men gathering in Central Park following the National Puerto Rican Day Parade set the stage for chaos captured on camera. Women were splashed with water, their clothes torn off, abused as men cheered each other on. Bryant says 18 of those men were criminally prosecuted for her attack, but to this day she blames the NYPD for their handling of the situation, recalling a conversation with a police officer when she went to file a report.
He actually said, "What you're describing as a sexual assault, I think you need to calm down and come back tomorrow."
Wow.
Wow.
You can never tell a woman that, go home and take a deep breath and just forget about it.
Susan Carton, a personal injury attorney, represented Bryant in her civil lawsuit against the city, accusing cops of standing by as lawlessness ensued.
Our argument was they had a duty to stop these rampages that were going on all through the park.
Carton says their case was settled as she was calling her first witness to the stand.
I felt it was a very important case for women and for the people of the city to be protected.
Bryant, who testified in both a criminal trial and police disciplinary hearing, decided to go to law school after her attack.
And I just found myself very compelled to help other women. I feel pretty strongly that no one would have believed me or any of the other women about what had happened that day if it had not been caught on video. The videographers did me a favor by capturing it so that the law could change.
Those advocating for the law to change say this case was the impetus for certain improvements in New York's Sexual Assault Reform Act in 2000.
The outrage and just utter horror of the Central Park attacks finally made the legislature say, hey, we've got to do something.
Matt Foreman was part of a coalition working for years to improve what he says was anti-victim sexual assault law in New York.
To make it much more clear that no actually does mean no, and to add things into the law that specifically described consent. Before, it was almost impossible to show that someone had not given consent.
Before the Reform Act,
we had to prove at that time, if you grabbed my butt, that you had done that for sexual gratification.
Lisa Friel, the deputy chief of the Manhattan DA's sex crimes unit at the time, says it was tough to prove that intent for some of the perpetrators in this case.
That contact was not about sexual gratification. It was about a bunch of drunk guys being jerks. And they were intending to harass these young women and degrade them and humiliate them.
But their actions, she says, resulted in the forcible touching statute in the Reform Act, holding men more accountable moving forward, regardless of what their intent may be.
And I really don't care why some stranger grabs my butt or my breast. That should be a crime. That should not be the same thing as a harassment if you just push me in the back.
Aside from improvements in the law, support has also evolved.
I think it was very easy for doctors and nurses and people providing care to, just treat the physical injuries and not recognizing the internal experience that is even more devastating in the majority of sexual assaults.
Christopher Bromson is the executive director of the Crime Victims Treatment Center, the first rape crisis program in the state that started at St. Luke's Hospital in 1977 and is now independent.
We work with people who have experienced horrific things, who think everything is their fault, that they could have prevented this, that they'll never be the same again. And the healing that we see working with the professionals that are in our office who are experts in this work, right? The healing is unbelievable.
Bromson says that healing starts with trust in the system.
If one person has experienced a sexual assault and they see another person who experienced the same sexual assault disclose that and be treated with support, respect, and belief, they're going to be way more likely to say, this happened to me too.
But even before the Me Too movement, this large-scale sexual assault left a lasting impression on the state. 20 years later,
I actually don't think that would happen again, because I think that the police department has much better tools in place to, especially with technology, as a result of that.
Now, we requested an interview with the NYPD to talk about the policing of parades since the sexual assaults in 2000, but the NYPD declined the request. We also reached out to police to talk to them about their special victims unit and how it deals with sexual crimes today, but again, the NYPD declined the request.